I woke up one morning and something was wrong. It wasn't anything drastic, nothing that made me jump out of bed, but something felt off. I went about my morning routine, eating breakfast, getting ready for work, all while standing next to my full-length mirror. In the mirror, I noticed my reflection lagged slightly behind my movements. I blinked and it took half a second for that action to show up in the mirror. I waved and it took a little longer for the motion to reach me in the glass. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was because I hadn't had enough sleep. Maybe I was imagining things. But then I walked past a shop window and caught sight of myself again. The same delay. My actions appearing in the glass a split second too late. Throughout the day, I dismissed it as tiredness, exhaustion playing tricks on me. But as the day wore on, more things started to feel off. My shadow, or at least the shadow cast by my reflection, no longer matched my movements. I would stretch out my arm and my mirror itself would remain still for a moment before following my command. At first, the difference was so subtle I could have ignored it, chalked it up to my fatigued brain. But it grew more pronounced as the hours passed. It was during lunchtime when I noticed my reflection smile. It wasn't a big smile, just a slight upward curve of the lips. And yet it struck me as odd because I wasn't smiling. I looked away and returned to my food, assuming my reflection was merely mimicking my earlier grin. But then it happened again. I glanced at the mirror and there was that smile again, slow and unnatural. This time though, it was clear I wasn't the one smiling. I checked my phone and saw I had received a message from a friend asking how I was doing. I hadn't smiled while reading the text, yet there I was grinning back at me from the depths of the mirror. A chill ran down my spine and I pushed my chair back from the table, stood abruptly and turned away from the mirror. I needed to get out of there. But as I moved, I caught sight of myself in another mirror. This one hanging on the wall beside the door. The smile was still there, wider now, somehow mocking, cruel. It was then I realized I wasn't looking at my reflection. It wasn't my smile frozen on my face. It was something else, something sinister wearing my skin. My breath hitched in my throat, and I stumbled back as if expecting the figure in the mirror to lunge at me, to break through the glass and claim my body for its own. But it didn't move. It only stared back, that ghastly grin never fading. Panic seized me and I ran. I fled the building, the city, taking the longest, most circuitous route away from my home. All the while I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see the thing from the mirror pursuing me. But it didn't follow. It remained trapped in the glass, forever locked behind the surface. I didn't return home that night. Instead, I sought refuge in a cheap motel, desperate to escape the nightmarish feeling that had been plaguing me since that morning. I slept fitfully, if at all, lying in the dark, listening to every creak and groan of the aging building. Was it there? Hunting me, waiting for me to let my guard down, or was I safe? Had it been left behind, banished from my life forever? The uncertainty gnawed at me, turning hours into minutes. Each tick of the clock seemed to echo my racing pulse. Dawn eventually broke, bringing with it the promise of a new day. As the motel room slowly filled with the soft light of morning, I made the decision to go home. But as I stepped back into my apartment, the dread I had felt the day before returned. The moment I laid eyes on the mirror in my hallway, I knew I wasn't alone. The entity had returned, and this time it was closer than ever. It was subtle at first, just a sense of movement in my peripheral vision. I would turn around and find nothing. Then the objects began to move. At first, it was barely noticeable, a pencil rolling off my desk, a pen falling from a cup, but then it escalated. Books flew off shelves, pictures tumbled from the walls. All the while, I could have sworn I heard soft scraping sounds, like fingernails on wood or glass. But when I turned to investigate, there was nothing there. No person, no animal, nothing but the relentless ticking of the clock. And always the reflection. It was like a macabre game. Like my doppelganger gleeful in its twisted amusement park. Watching me from behind the glass, it seemed almost taunting. Then the mockery intensified. It started mimicking my actions, but incorrectly. When I would reach out to touch something, my reflection would pull away. If I moved to the right, it would mimic my motion, then continue on in a strange, contorted dance. It was a mockery of me, a perversion of my reality. I became terrified to look in the mirror, afraid of what grotesque parody of myself I would find staring back. I tried to cover the mirrors, at first with cloths, then with sticky notes, eventually taping up huge pieces of cardboard to the doors. But no matter where I hid, it found me. I would hear the scraping sound, then turn to see the outline of my form already taped over, the reflection peering at me from behind the barrier. It was then I truly understood the depth of my predicament. I wasn't dealing with a simple poltergeist or a malevolent spirit. This was something far more insidious, something that mirrored my every move, my every thought, my every fear. I felt trapped, hunted, imprisoned in my own home. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed a bag and left. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. I just needed to escape the suffocating terror that permeated every inch of my apartment. But even in my new place, I couldn't escape its grasp. It followed me, an unwelcome shadow, haunting my dreams, invading my waking hours. Then I would catch sight of myself in a shop window, see the reflection in a pane of glass, and recoil in horror. For a fleeting moment, I would swear the reflection didn't match my movements, that the grin on my face wasn't mine. It was then I realized I wasn't just haunted by a reflection. I was haunted by a memory, a trauma that clung to me like a shroud. Weeks turned into months. I tried to move on, to put the terrifying ordeal behind me. I dated, traveled, threw myself into my work. But always I felt its lingering presence. Sometimes it was subtle, a ghost of a feeling at the edge of my vision. Other times it was more pronounced, like a hand brushing against my arm, a whisper in my ear. One evening, I was having dinner with a friend when I noticed a peculiar movement in the restaurant's large window. I turned to my companion, pointing excitedly, and that's when I saw it, my reflection, the reflection I had left behind so many months ago, was there staring back at me from the depths of the window. The same mocking grin on my face, the same predatory gleam in my eyes, and then it vanished. I don't want to be too dramatic, but that was the last time I ever saw it. I truly believe it left me then, finally moving on after all those months of torment. Or maybe it was merely testing me, seeing if I would turn back, if I would once again fall prey to its games. These days, I can still feel its presence sometimes. There's a coldness at the back of my neck, a prickling on the skin at the base of my skull like ice fingers tracing the line of my spine. I tell myself it's nothing, that I'm overreacting, that it's just nerves. But then I catch sight of myself in a shop window or a mirror, and the memory floods back. The terror, the helplessness, the knowledge that I'm not alone. In this world, I walk on eggshells around mirrors, keeping them covered whenever I can. I never learned who or what that thing was, why it chose me, why it tormented me so. But one thing I do know, it's still out there, watching, waiting, patient, forever smiling. Thanks for watching. Do you think the narrator should confront the reflection or just keep running? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, check out more stories like these.